Hey, Kyle, welcome to the show.
All right, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. So for the folks who might not yet know who you are or what your company does, let's start there. Who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Kyle Goguen, and I own and operate Postruck.com. Started Postruck in 2014 after college, and have been running it ever since. We primarily sell dog treats and dog chews, focusing on premium, natural, healthy products, single ingredient stuff like think cow ears, pig ears, hooves, bully sticks, everything related to that. And we sell on our website, sell across a bunch of other online sales channels like Amazon, eBay, Groupon, Amazon UK. Pretty much anywhere where our customer exists is where we are. Strictly sell online, direct to consumer.
Okay. So in terms of a key success metric that the audience would understand to give them an idea of kind of where you're at in your journey, most folks answer this question in terms of revenue, and I think you were okay with that. Roughly, what did you do in 18 and what did you do in 17?
Sure. So 17, we're around just kind of rough numbers, 4 million or so in revenue. And then 2018, we're about 8.8. And then 2019, we're looking to about double that.
So that's pretty awesome. That's phenomenal growth. And as we continue through this interview, hopefully we'll uncover the reasons why you've been growing so quickly. So before we get into what's really working today, let's do a little bit of background investigation. When you were young, was there anything in your childhood that indicated that you were going to become this super successful entrepreneur?
I think there was a lot of stuff that indicated that I would be an entrepreneur. Success might be a different story, but I sold, I guess, two stories that I could probably bring up. When I was a little kid, probably like 7 or 8, I really wanted this orange BMX bike that I was excited about for whatever reason. And my parents told me that I had to come up with the money to buy it if I really wanted to. So I started selling these USA flag pins at different events and door to door. So that was kind of my first memory of trying to make some money on the side. And then the second thing, my first job ever, I was, I guess, 15 and a half or 16. I was trying to get hired at all the local restaurants and businesses, and no one wanted to hire me because I had no experience. I was like a young kid. I don't even know if I had a resume or what the resume would actually even say. But I found a guy on Craigslist who was willing to hire me. And what it ended up being was he would buy returned electronics from big retailers like Fry's and Best Buy. He would buy them by the container load. And he hired me to come in and help him weed through all the different electronics, find anything that was new or working or used for parts. And then I would help him sell that on eBay, and I would make a commission and cut there. So those were kind of my two early on stories of selling things both online and in the physical space that kind of got me my start.
Do you think that if you wouldn't have had that experience selling on eBay that you still would have ended up going down the e-commerce path?
It's a great question, and I actually have thought about that before. I think I probably would have ended up there somehow. It would have maybe just been less of a direct path, but I've always been pretty tech savvy and drawn to kind of the internet, and I honestly couldn't really see myself running like a brick and mortar store. Like that's just not really my expertise. Like I'd much rather be behind the scenes and create something very scalable, and not interacting face to face with the end user is probably my ideal business, I guess you could say.
Okay. And this is, aside from college, this is pretty much your first real job, and you happen to be the boss, correct?
Yeah. So in a way you could say I've never had a real job. So I've kind of ruined myself, that I don't know if I could ever go back, which is a good and bad thing. Yeah, exactly. But in terms of jobs, yeah, I had that eBay job that I told you guys about, told you about. And then I went to college and I had a campus job. And I also did marketing as like a college rep for Monster Energy and PlayStation and Ubisoft and a couple other brands like that. But it wasn't really a full-time job. And honestly, for the most part, it was them sending me a lot of free product and me giving it out to a bunch of college students and talking about the brands and the items that they were happening to be promoting at the time. So other than that, not a lot of job experience.
And what did you take in college?
I was an engineer, so I got my degree in industrial and systems engineering. So not something that I use on a day-to-day basis with Postruck, but in theory, I did take a lot of classes on warehousing and like optimization and some of those sort of classes that apply in a way to what we're doing. But it was more so at a much larger scale. So I'd be learning how to optimize, like if I had 10 warehouses across the nation with, 10 million square feet spread out between them with a bunch of manufacturing processes and all this sort of stuff. That's what I learned in school. In reality, we have one warehouse with about 15 people in it. It's much simpler, and you're not doing all these crazy math formulas to optimize it.
So aside from the fun of going to college, would it be safe to say that your time there was, in hindsight, maybe not terribly well spent?
I definitely do not regret it at all. I think I learned a lot and grew up a lot. But yeah, I mean, directly related, no, probably not. It's definitely still on my resume and something I can always fall back on. Also, I didn't mention this, but I did get my master's as well before jumping into Postruck, or actually it was right around the same time in 2014. I was getting my master's and I started Postruck at the same time. So just add that master's degree to the the list of things that maybe didn't need to be and were very expensive, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding. So we all have to come up with ideas. There's a million different things that we could pursue. And for a lot of people, coming up with the idea that they think, man, I really should do this thing versus this other thing or this other thing or this other thing. How did that play out for you? Did you have a whole list of ideas? Had you been keeping them in a book for years? Or did you just kind of stumble across this idea one day in your natural course of your life?
So it was definitely the latter of what you just said. I had actually I failed to mention this before, but I did intern with Target in their distribution center for a summer prior to senior year in college. And I actually accepted a full-time job with them starting after I graduated. So the plan was to work for them, or honestly kind of like interview with some other companies and see if that would work out. At the time, I had just gotten a puppy and he was living with me in my apartment. And he was definitely part of the inspiration for Postruck in general. So it was kind of that aha moment when I realized that the things that I was trying to buy for him and find for him were, expensive, number one, hard to find. I didn't really, as a college student, didn't really want to drive around and go to pet stores all the time. So I was trying to find stuff online, and it was kind of limited in terms of the offering and really expensive. So it was that aha moment where it was like, let me combine my ability or desire to sell stuff online with my passion for dogs and kind of this opportunity that I had stumbled upon. And so, like I said, I had already accepted a job offer. So it was definitely not the plan going into it. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial, and I could see that doing that later in my life. But it was kind of luck that this idea came to me and I actually decided to pull the trigger on it.
So first of all, what's the puppy's name?
Tyson. He passed away a couple years ago, actually, unfortunately, out of the blue, but he's still kind of the mascot of the brand and lives on through Postruck.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you described this aha moment, but lots of people have puppies, but they're not all getting the aha moment. So and I want to go into this a little bit more because I want people to really understand how the mind of an entrepreneur works, because it's different than the mind of just a consumer. So sure. You've got your puppy Tyson, you're trying to buy some food or treats or whatever for him. And, this is in what, 2014?
2014, maybe 13.
Okay.
Somewhere in that range.
So there's stuff everywhere. There's stuff all over Amazon. There's stuff in Petco and PetSmart. I mean, like, there's no lack of stuff. But yet this guy who's never had a job or even a business, think, oh, there's an opportunity here. Well, like, why? How does that even happen?
So I guess a couple different things. One, I saw the opportunity as there were people selling similar products, but they were either huge brands selling for like way too expensive, or really, really small guys that were like doing it out of like their basement, and it wasn't very legitimate at the time. So I saw that kind of in between, that ability to source things direct, provide things a lot more affordably, and just go direct to consumer instead of going through the multiple levels of distribution that exist in the pet space. And then the second thing was, you kind of alluded to it already, is like the difference in mindset between kind of an entrepreneur, or at the time, I guess, someone who wanted to be an entrepreneur. Is I can't help it, but my mind always is analyzing pretty much everything, trying to figure out like, how is that a business? Does that actually making money? Is that working? So anytime I'm at any sort of store or even a restaurant or a bar, I'm always wondering, how well their business is going and how everything works together. And it's definitely gotten worse or better, depending on how you look at it, as I've gone through the last, 4 or 5 years. But even since I was a little kid, I always just wanted to understand. And I've always been curious. So I think it was kind of that mindset where I wasn't just shopping for dog treats. It's like everything else. I was shopping for dog treats, but trying to understand like what the opportunity was there, and how if these other people were doing it, how were they doing it, and if they were doing well at it.
Yeah, I have the same problem. I think most every entrepreneur does. But you said like the large brands, you said they were so expensive. You didn't know the cost of goods sold of any of this stuff at that point in time, I'm assuming. You're looking at this bag. Were you just looking at the bag like a consumer and going, bag or whatever it was, and going, oh man, that's just too expensive? Like you just had a feeling that it was too expensive? Or was there had you actually done any research to think, I can probably do it for a better price than that?
So no research. It was just kind of what you described, being a kind of basically poor college student trying to get something that was healthy and natural for my dog. I'd go in the store and it's like, are you kidding me? Like $20 for like a couple of these dog treats that last like a half hour or an hour. I'm just like, that's more money than I spent on myself for my dog. Yeah. And so it was kind of that thought process. It was like, I bet you I could do this better or cheaper, because most of these big companies have a huge sales staff, and they have to kind of do that traditional like keystone pricing where they're going through multiple levels of distribution. And so, I mean, I got lucky because I was able to do that, but I didn't do any sort of research in advance, I guess.
Okay. So the takeaway, folks, here is this. Kyle had what we all have, sticker shock to a high price. And rather than leave it at that, the entrepreneurial part of your mind went into problem-solving mode and opportunity mode, thinking, hey, maybe if I do a bit of research, I might be able to find myself an opportunity here. And obviously you did. Yeah,
and I guess to add one more thing to that too, I think the biggest thing was that I realized that there's probably a lot of waste involved. It wasn't really that I was trying to get into the business of selling something cheaper or like lower quality or anything like that. Like if anything, quality is still our number one concern that, I would put our stuff up against any of the big guys. It's just more that, in my opinion, they have a lot of waste because they're such a big organization with so much overhead and all that stuff that for an e-commerce business model is not necessary. Yep. And so that's kind of where we're able to find that opportunity.
Yep. Okay. So aha moment in hand. Now, what was the first step that you took to launch your business?
So I guess, the first step is trying to do all the research that I hadn't done, like we mentioned. So figure out like, what are we going to sell? How are we even going to get our hands on it? And then what was the simplest way to just go ahead and launch that? So like every new entrepreneur or probably experienced entrepreneur, made a ton of mistakes in the beginning.
Did you write a business plan?
If you could call it that. I mean, I had a piece of paper where I was writing out. I wasn't a business student, so I didn't know what a business plan was. I'm pretty sure I Googled it and was like, just writing out ideas and things like that. But really just came up with all the products that I saw online doing well. So you could go look at things, look at reviews. Honestly, it was a lot just going off like my gut feeling, figuring out suppliers for things, and then figuring out the easiest way to launch things quickly. So for us, it's like natural body parts of animals, right? Like a cow ear and a pig ear and so on. So we'd be buying these raw materials, and we were able to package them using similar bagging, for example. So we didn't have to have custom packaging for a bunch of different SKUs. We could use the same bag across a bunch of different SKUs and just fill it with a different type of, body part or dog treat for that matter. And so that's how we were able to start. And we started with quite a few SKUs from the get-go.
So I remember I actually took a look at the pet niche, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And I remember, because you glazed over something that you made sound easy, but I remember it being not easy. So I was looking at bully sticks in particular. Mm-hmm. And I think because I had bought some bully sticks for my dog, and I was like, man, these things, kind of like you, well, these things are expensive. And I'm looking for, where can I source bully sticks? And this is, at a time when the internet information is readily available. And it was, unless I wanted to buy them out of China, which I didn't want to do, it was not easy at all to find suppliers for bully sticks. So you talk like it was so easy. What was your particular approach, and why was it easy for you?
Yeah. I tend to do that. It's a bad habit where I just kind of, looking back, I remember things as it way easier than it was. Mm-hmm. It's definitely not easy, and I don't mean to make it sound easy. I guess realistically, it's hard, and it's a lot of time and effort to do that research, get a list of suppliers, contact them, get samples, really understand their pricing, their product, lead time, importing. All of that is really, I guess, complicated. But the great thing with the internet is, like, honestly, you can kind of figure out anything. And in a way, you can kind of portray yourself as much more legitimate than maybe you really are in the beginning. Mm-hmm. So definitely portraying myself as much more professional and larger, given that I hadn't really sold anything at the time. But, approaching these suppliers in a way that indicates that I could move a lot of product, which was obviously maybe not the case in the beginning. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those supplier relationships and the suppliers we were able to find, that's a bit of our secret sauce of finding the best quality products and all of that sort of stuff and sourcing it. But it's not rocket science. It's really just staying, I guess, motivated to get the job done and determined, and going through as many suppliers as it takes until you find exactly what you're looking for and someone who's a good fit.
At any point during the research phase, I mean, did you hop on airplanes and go see these people, or was pretty much everything online communication, send me samples, I'll look at samples, and then I'll choose who I like?
So the business is like pretty tight in terms of cash, as you can imagine. So initially it was just email, maybe phone, maybe Skype, but primarily email. Which I think can definitely work, obviously. But the sooner you're able to build that face-to-face relationship and go out there, the better. And that's something that we do more so now. We have a lot of existing relationships with suppliers that we can really trust. So I don't do it as much, but getting a face-to-face can really help. And I know that's the case based on a lot of my peers saying the same thing, especially those that are sourcing from China, which we don't do, but I've heard going out there can really expedite that process of building a relationship.
So when you started, you decided to, I think, sell your own products. Had you considered reselling products from existing brands?
Yeah. So I guess we went through this kind of odd cycle. Initially, we sold only our brand. And then a couple years later, we decided maybe we should also be a reseller of other brands, thinking, because our customers told us, and we kind of had in our head, what if we're more of a one-stop shop? If our customer is buying a cow ear from us, they probably need a dog collar at some point, or a dog bowl, and fill in the blank product. And so that went okay. But we also, I kind of came to the realization that wasn't really the right move and the right direction for us as a brand. We were just spending a bunch of time and effort and money building up other people's brands. And that's not really what I want to do in this day and age. I think for us to differentiate ourselves in the market, we need to stick to our own products and the things that we have full control over and that we can fully stand behind. And there's totally value for resellers, and that's totally fine. It's just not something that we really want to get into. I can tell like the viewers that generally margins are lower. There's a lot more rules involved. You have a lot more suppliers that you're buying from. You don't have a lot of control. Whereas our brand, we can do exactly what we want and when we want, and we can sell it on any channel that we want to sell it on too. Mm-hmm. So we've decided to kind of scale that back, get rid of all the other brands, and just 100% focus on Postrec from kind of this point forward. This decision was made like a couple months ago, so we're in the process of making that transition.
Okay. So when you launched your store, what platform did you use originally? I think you said there was 40 or 50 products or so. Like, I'm just kind of looking for like the first version when you said, "Hey, we're open for business. Send us your money." Like, kind of what did it look like at that point in time?
So we built it on Magento Community Edition. I can't remember the edition number, but it was before this new 2.0 rollout that's happened over the last couple of years. It was okay to start, and we had a ton of technical issues at a certain point. And I'm fairly tech savvy. Like, I can go in and change some HTML and all that sort of stuff, but stuff way above my experience level. And we had major issues. And then we eventually, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, switched from Magento to Shopify, and have been very happy with Shopify since. And then in terms of what the website looked like, it was similar to what we have now. But I think one mistake that I made early on with our kind of designer and developer at the time was trying to make things too pretty. That just wasn't really a good move for us. We kind of gave up. We cut corners on like from a conversion standpoint and made things look really nice. When looking back, I would have done things the opposite way and focus on providing a really good shopping experience that converted customers versus, I guess, a pretty. So for some brands that makes sense, but for us, it was more just making a really functional shopping experience that provided all the information really easy.
So on the homepage of your site, as I'm seeing it in my session, there's the Let's Find Your Perfect Product. There's a cat and a dog. There's the drop down, and then there's the pick of the litter products below it. How long has the Let's Find Your Perfect Product been above the fold on the homepage?
So that was part of our transition to Shopify. So a couple of years ago, that's kind of when we scrapped the things that look really pretty, and we just made a much more functional, straightforward website, both on the front end and the back end with Shopify. It's been a dream in comparison to what we had to go through on Magento.
And is that just a Shopify app that enables that functionality?
Oh, the kind of that quiz functionality on the above the fold. Yeah, it's an app that we were able to find and then kind of integrated that into the that banner area.
What's the app called?
I do not remember, but I can absolutely look it up if you want to put it in the show notes or anything.
Yeah, I would like to put it in the show notes. And then down below, you've got the pick of the litter. Are they manually selected, or is there an app, or is there some native functionality in Shopify which chooses the products that are going to be pick of the litter?
Everything on the homepage, including that kind of block, is manually selected. And by design. I mean, there are some apps that can do things dynamically, and we probably could have done that, but we chose that for a couple reasons. Number one, we don't have a huge catalog of our own products, so it's really not that hard to manage that. And then number two, just for page speed reasons, like just trying to limit the number of apps and the things that are loading dynamically all the time. Like, we're able to just load in like a really optimized image for each of those that's like loads super fast, even though, like you've seen, the homepage is like fairly long in length. It still loads decently fast.
Are there any of your top two? What are 2 or 3 of your top or your preferred Shopify apps that you think are must-haves?
Good question. So while I do like that one that I can't remember the name that we just mentioned in the banner, I don't think that's one that's necessary. It's really like shop specific. One I really do like is, I think it's called Rewind for Shopify, and that basically backs up your store completely. It's like an insurance plan. If you or one of your employees or some technical issue like takes down your website, Rewind is like in, I think it's like hour by hour or whatever time frame, you can just back up your store, and you could, if you have an issue today, you could go revert your store to yesterday and fix all those issues. It's awesome. I've had to use it once. You don't want to have to use it, but the one time you have to, you are so happy you invested the like $20 to $50 a month or whatever that happens to be. It's pretty awesome.
Okay.
Let's see, other apps that we use. One-click upsell. There's a couple variations of that, or different companies that have that. I would definitely look into that if you have products that you could cross-sell or upsell. And I especially like the post-checkout upsells. So after someone has already made their purchase, you're not getting in their way at all. They've made their purchase, and now you can sell them something else at a discount, because you're already going to ship them a box anyways. So why not up that average order value? And if you sell a product that is consumable, the best conversions that we've found is just sell them more of the same product. You already know what they like, so don't even cross-sell them. So if they're going to buy cow ears and they already bought 50 of them, well, offer them another 10 more cow ears at a discount or something like that. It's kind of a slam dunk because you know they already want it.
Yep. Okay. And have you got a third one to round it out? Third app?
Trying to think of. I mean, I guess it is a Shopify app. It's just our email service provider that we use. It's Klaviyo. That hooks into Shopify, so it's kind of cheating a little bit. But Klaviyo is great when it comes to e-commerce, emailing and automation and everything like that. Like, I've tried a couple of the other ones, and they just don't really hold up to the same automation and the data that you can put into Klaviyo.
Okay. So what have been some of the biggest challenges? Let's divide this question into sort of two parts. We'll call it the early phase. So the first, say, 24 months after launch, and then any time since then. So first 24 months after launch, what would you say were the two biggest challenges you had to deal with?
Two biggest challenges early on. Yeah. So the first thing was just a lack of experience. I had never owned my own business. I had never really worked. Like we said, like, I've had some jobs here and there, but like, I didn't have a bunch of experience as like an employee even, or just in the business world, right? Like, I had to learn all the terminology. Like, I don't know what a purchase order is, or an invoice, or how they even go together. All of the terminology, that was all new for me. That is especially true for anything accounting related. That was all brand new. So that stuff was really difficult to overcome. I mean, luckily, all of that information, or for the most part, is available online if you know where to look. But I did actually go through a couple of programs and took some classes and to help expedite that process. But really, it's just over time you pick up on all that stuff, especially if you're interacting with other business owners and other business owners in your industry, like in e-commerce or something like that. It really expedites all of that pretty fast.
So how about after the first 24 months? What are the biggest challenges now?
For me, it's for sure delegating. That early on period is where I guess my personality would allow me to excel. Like, I'm quite a perfectionist, and I'm pretty well rounded. Like, I can figure out how to do most things, whether it's a little bit of photo editing or video editing or copywriting. I can handle almost all of that sort of stuff, which is great when you're bootstrapping it in the beginning, because I can make everything happen relatively cheap, relatively quickly. But as we started to scale up and we started to build a team, it was really hard for me to kind of get out of my own way and, number one, hire enough people to get the job done. And then number two, give up responsibilities when those people were in place and really trust them to do it the same or better than I was doing before. So it's something I still struggle with. It's something that I know I'm not great at naturally. So I have to force myself to do it. And it's a conscious effort, but it has been going better, but slow going still.
So have you ever heard the phrase, you can have growth or you can have control, but you can't have both?
Yes, I have heard that phrase.
Okay.
And I would agree with it. Yeah.
So for the people in the audience who maybe don't know exactly what we mean, why don't you explain it?
Well, this is another kind of cliche saying around the same topic that I was very much so working in my business and not on my business. I was for sure, I still am to some extent like the bottleneck, because by having so much control, I don't have enough time to do all the things that I have control of well. And so all I'm doing is just slowing things down, as opposed to with growth, like obviously we're scaling a bunch of processes up, and there's no way for me to do everything. So I guess to get back to your original point is like, you can't really do both. At a certain point, the things that are going to allow you to grow, you won't be able to do all of them. Like we have so much opportunity that we have right now, and I can't be a part of every single piece of it.
You mentioned the word processes. Are documented processes, or as I like to call them, standard operating procedures, are they playing much of a role in your organization at this point in time?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge focus of ours. And I mean, my opinion is it should be a focus of any business owner, no matter if you're online or brick and mortar or anything in between, because that's really what allows you to delegate more effectively, faster, and really scale and grow. So for us, our SOPs, we use Asana for our kind of task management and communication, along with Slack. And then within Asana, when we're assigning tasks, our processes or SOPs are all documented in Google Docs or by video. And then anytime there's any sort of reoccurring task, myself or one of my employees will create a process for it. And those are continued to be updated over time as things change, or there's a better way to do it. But at least that's the goal. We're not perfect at it, but we're trying to get as much stuff documented as possible.
And of course, naturally, now that you've been on the show, you're going to go and check out Flowster, right?
That's right.
For anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that is, Flowster is at flowster.app. And it is the software platform that myself and a business partner created for people to create SOPs for their business, and it's what we use ourselves. All right, let's talk about sales strategy. So Amazon, you can't really avoid Amazon if you're an e-commerce business. Amazon is a big chunk of your sales. How do they... Did you plan it that way, that they were going to be a big chunk of your sales, or did you just sort of get forced into it that they became a big chunk of your sales? And what does the strategy look like?
I think early on, I guess I would describe it as we fell into it in a way. So we sold on our website from the get-go. We sold on eBay because eBay is what I knew, like I mentioned, from my first job. So I knew that world. And then we quickly got on Amazon, and it took us a while to really figure out, like, wow, a lot of people shop on Amazon. Obviously, you know, looking back, that's like, duh. But at the time, I didn't quite realize the power of Amazon. And obviously, there's definitely a lot of pros and cons to selling on Amazon or any channel. But for us, for our brand, it makes the most sense to be wherever our customers are shopping. So there are a huge subset of pet customers that are very loyal to Amazon and only want to buy on Amazon, and that's okay with us. We'll put our product in front of them there. If they want to shop on Groupon, cool, we'll sell it to you there. Ideally, you want to come to our website because you really love our brand, and you've found it there, and there's a huge customer base that does that, and that's terrific. And you know, of course, we'd prefer that, to have a little bit more control and be able to communicate directly with those customers. But in reality, we don't really care where our shoppers want to find us. We just want to be everywhere that they are.
So one of the deals that crossed my desk yesterday, a company that's for sale that we're looking at potentially buying, in the offering memorandum, they talked about their Amazon strategy and how they're able to get all of their products to rank within 1 week, and their sales growth is phenomenal. But as soon as I read that, it was big red flag for me, because I'm thinking, what on earth are they doing to be able to get their product to rank in 1 week every single time? Any thoughts as to what that might look like?
So you should definitely ask them and then tell me exactly what that is. No, I am pretty in tune with a lot of the stuff that's going on Amazon, and for my brand, and it depends on people's, I guess, risk tolerance and maybe their own ethical code and all of those sort of things. There's a lot of people who do try to game the system. And that's not really something that we try to push the envelope with. I love knowing about those sort of things, more so because I'm really curious and I'm like a nerd about it and like to know, but also just so that we can protect ourselves if any competitors are doing anything or things like that. But, my guess is whatever they're doing it in a way to mimic a product that is selling really well. So hopefully they are just moving a lot of, have a really good sales velocity for that product by running a bunch of Facebook ads or something like that. Maybe they have an existing audience that they launch to regularly. So they're able to take that 10,000 person list that's really passionate about their product and tell them about the new product and get it ramped up really quickly.
That's not, in this case, that ain't it.
Got it. So then they're probably doing something else that works right now and hopefully is something that will continue to work for them. But if it's against TOS or anything like that, then I'd be a little bit weary personally, just because it might be a short-term strategy. And even if they don't get suspended or anything like that, then that sort of growth might go away someday.
It's my single biggest concern with this particular deal. I had read, and I consider myself no black hat expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I had read that a few years ago you could search for a keyword, go down, add to cart, and just do that over and over and over again. And some way you could fool the algorithm and it would increase the ranking of that product because it saw it getting added to cart so many times. You ever hear of anything like that?
From your same computer?
No, you had to get a whole bunch of different people to do it or something. Again,
okay.
I remember.
So I too have heard that. I have yet to try it. But according to what I've heard, add to carts do matter in terms of ranking. I'm not sure why Amazon looks at that as a ranking factor. It would make sense to me for products with lower sales velocity, just because you don't have a lot of data to go after. Like if there's not a lot of conversions for the whole category, then they kind of have to use something else to indicate that people are interested in it. But for things that move really fast, like if you're selling something really popular, I have no clue why they would look at add to carts versus sales. It doesn't really make sense to me.
I would agree with you. It doesn't make sense to me either. All right. Speaking of acquisitions, what a great segue. Have you made any? Because I know you have.
Yes. In January of this year, we purchased a dog subscription box company called thedapperdogbox.com. The majority of their business is on their website. They do sell through Amazon's beta program, subscription box beta program, but on a limited basis. And yeah, we acquired them in January, and we're still in the process of migrating over that business into our ERP system and kind of taking over the fulfillment of all of that. And then once that's all completed, then we plan on really trying to scale that up. And so far it's been a lot more work than expected, but overall, I think a great decision on our part. It's a brand that fits really well into what we're already doing. Like we have the infrastructure of a warehouse and a shipping team that can handle all the fulfillment needs. Allows us to diversify in a way. This customer base is slightly younger and a little bit different than our existing customer base, but similar enough where we can utilize some of our existing products and include them in this subscription box as well. So it's just a kind of a fun new project, and it's something that we're all excited about in the office, but also has taken up a great deal of our time in the last couple of months.
Well, sure, because there's so much more to do than when you're selling on Amazon. There's so many more moving pieces that you're now responsible for.
Yep. Which, to be honest, is a lot of stuff that we're already used to, just given the fulfillment and all the stuff we have to do for Postar. But just a lot of stuff that comes up that you don't think about, don't expect. We set it up as a completely separate entity, which also causes some complication from an accounting standpoint and creating new bank accounts and credit cards, just all the stuff that you forget about, because I did it in 2014 for Bostruck, and it's been years and years since I did that. All that stuff takes time. But it's really exciting because the previous owner, her goals and kind of her whole like business strategy with it really aligned well with what we were doing. So it was kind of a cool, fun, and like easy transition. And we're kind of able to take her baby essentially and her dream, and then help continue it to grow with her like same strategy in mind. It was just something that she couldn't do herself because she didn't really have a big enough team to handle it.
Is the business model for the Dapper Dog Box pretty much the same as BarkBox?
So it's very similar in a way, and there's quite a kind of maybe like a handful, 5 to 10 that are kind of very similar in the same space. I would say the major difference that you might be able to figure it out in the name is the Dapper Dog Box includes a custom / limited edition bandana in every box. So each box is themed, and every box comes with a bandana that we're designing in-house with our designers, getting it made. It's like super high quality, and you can't buy that bandana anywhere else. So it's pretty fun. It fits the theme of all the other treats and toys in the box, and it's very people like taking a lot of pictures, let's just say. So it's kind of a cool way to get our customers to take photos of their dog wearing the bandana with the box and the other products. So it fits really well for a lot of social media, and we will definitely be pursuing social media advertising pretty aggressively once we're ready to.
So from what I understand about BarkBox's business model is now they're at a point where all the stuff that goes in the box that they're shipping is coming to BarkBox for free because these brands want exposure to BarkBox's large customer base by sending these samples out in the subscription box. Is that how it works? Because in essence, they're selling a box of air for $20 a month. And advertisers, known as brands, are saying, hey, we'll put our stuff in that box, but we're not going to charge you for it. Is that how it works?
So it depends, I think, depending on the box. So I've definitely heard that being the case for ones in the pet space, and also like other like makeup brands and stuff like that they basically get at a huge discount or for free to kind of put the products out there and get exposure to all these potential customers, right? BarkBox possibly was like that, but at some point, but to my knowledge, I don't think is like that now, because I have some other friends in the pet space who sell into the box, and they get compensated. So they're probably getting a discount. But also something that I've seen BarkBox and a lot of the other boxes doing is they're moving more to a private label style, where when you order a BarkBox now, a lot of times you're not getting products that are someone else's brand. You're getting BarkBox's toys. Yeah. Like it says, it's a by BarkBox. Same with all the other products they're including. So I think people are more focused on building out something that is theirs entirely. So obviously the costs are still there. They're not selling that $20 box of air, but there are some other pet ones that do want a big discount. So, but if anyone wants to give us product for free to put in the box, by all means, we'll take it. But that's not our business model.
So when you were going through the due diligence process on this, so it was listed with a broker. I imagine you got an offering memorandum just like I received yesterday. You and a whole bunch of other people probably got it, and now you're competing to buy this business against other buyers. You did not have a prior relationship with the seller, if I remember correctly.
Correct. So, we'd never met.
Okay, so at some point in time in your due diligence, just kind of walk me through what the due diligence process looked like from receipt of OM, offering memorandum, through to, we'll just say, letter of intent.
So we moved really fast, I guess, is the first thing. And it really depends on, a couple things. The seller, how fast they're willing and able to move, how fast you want to move as a potential buyer, and also the broker, to be honest, because the broker is kind of like this in-between piece. So if the broker's moving slow, it can kind of slow things down. For us, we were all motivated to sell to close as soon as possible. The seller, she was moving on to her next career and some other things, other reasons why, where she was ready to go as fast as possible. And we wanted to make it happen as well. Because once we kind of ran the financials and looked at the opportunity, it wasn't something we were trying to miss out on. And then we just try to do the due diligence as fast as possible, just ensure that everything she said was true. And if we knew as soon as we kind of checked all those boxes, we were ready to basically, transfer the money right away. So I think all in all, it probably took us maybe like a month and a half, which I think is fairly quick. And that includes like kind of the full transition of everything. And the main reason we were waiting was because we were going through this in December, I believe. And we wanted to wait until the beginning of the year in 2019, because we were going to start this new entity to purchase the business. And we want to keep things clean from an accounting standpoint, like just start it in 2019 and not have to file in 2018 and other stuff like that.
What multiple did you have to pay, and did you pay cash or did you get an SBA loan?
We paid cash in a lump sum, which is both, well, obviously what she was looking for, or her preferred method, but also was just, we felt comfortable doing that, and it was just the fastest way to get the deal done. Also competing with other offers and stuff like that, just
gives
cash
you
is always
advantage.
Better. Yeah. In terms of multiple, I actually don't remember the exact multiple offhand at this point, because a lot of what our calculations were going into was how we could make the business more efficient and scalable. So I remember the numbers that we kind of projected out based on some of the savings we were able to provide. And then in terms of how much we paid, again, that's part of our secret sauce that we'll probably not share elsewhere. But what I would say was, it was definitely reasonably priced. It was priced to sell. The business was doing well, but it was just something that the owner was ready to move on from, and she made a fair offer. And honestly, we didn't really even negotiate a whole lot, because I thought it was fair, and we just kind of agreed upon a price, and it was really refreshing. It wasn't like this, like this battle that I think sometimes happens when you're buying and selling. And that might be the case on a much larger business where a lot more money is changing hands. But for us, it was pretty straightforward. Both sides were really honest with our intentions and what she was looking to get out of it, and vice versa. And it was a fairly easy process. I think lucky for us, it was, yeah.
Was her revenue at the time under or over $1 million?
It was under.
Under. Okay. Okay. So you probably paid somewhere between 2.5 and maybe 4x, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, it's definitely in that range. I mean, that's kind of the standard, and somewhere in there.
Okay. We are nearly done. What question did I not ask you, and we figured this one out in the pre-interview, that if you were interviewing yourself, you would have asked? Do you remember what that question was?
Yeah, I do. So I think a question that a lot of entrepreneurs or people who would like to start their own business struggle with is, when is the right time? Is it, is there a period of time in your life that is easier or better to do this? Is it you're waiting for the right idea? All of those sort of things are, people get hung up on those, and then they end up just not taking action and starting a business. So one thing I could say, and I can only really speak from my personal experience, is that I obviously started it fairly young, right out of college. And I would say that, in my opinion, is a great time to start a business. I was living like a college student in college, and when I started the business, nothing really changed. I was still, making ends meet, but kind of barely. I had student debt. I was eating, pretty cheaply. Rent was low, and all of that sort of stuff. I didn't have a wife and kids or any sort of responsibility, so it made it much easier just to focus on the business. And in the worst case scenario, if the business crashed and burned, I was kind of be in the same place I was. So I think if you are a young person and you're considering it, I say you just, make the jump and try it out. And even if Postrek would have failed, I think you learn a ton going through that process, and you're ready to kind of take that next jump. If you kind of just sit there and overly analyze every opportunity, you may never take that jump, and then life gets complicated. You get older, get used to a certain lifestyle, and maybe have a family or something like that, and it gets hard. And now that I'm a part of a lot of business owner and e-commerce kind of networking groups, one thing I can say that I hear over and over again for anyone who's at all older than me is they say, like, wow, I wish I would have started earlier. I wish I wouldn't have spent 10, 15 years, 20 years in the corporate world, and I wish I would have just done it. Easier said than done, but that's kind of what my experience and what I hear over and over again.
Being older than you and having been an entrepreneur now for 20 years, I think about 20, older is harder, just because wife, kids, mortgages, more stuff, more responsibility. I wish I would have, I started, at 30. I wish I would have started at 25 or 24 or 23. So if you're listening and you're in your 20s, both Kyle and I are encouraging you to take the plunge now. Don't wait.
Yeah. And if you're older, it's not too late.
No, and that too. All right, Kyle. Well, thank you so much for making some time to come and be on the show. It was a pleasure to have you here. For folks who want to go and check out Kyle's store, it is at pawstruck.com.
That's right. Thanks for having me.